On today's episode, we're going to turn this into this. Stick around, I'll show you how I did it. I got a fever!
Hello friends and welcome to the channel. Today's project is a very special one to me as it involves my teenage daughter, more specifically her bedroom. We recently moved into a new house, which meant she had to say goodbye to her childhood bedroom, which if you've ever been through that, can be quite heartbreaking. So in order to help ease the pain, I had to make sure that her room was extra special. And I think we did a good job of delivering on that. She has a very secluded space down in the basement with a kitchenette and bathroom mostly to herself. However, there was one quirk that we needed to address. The existing layout includes an extra doorway leading into her bedroom, which takes away any functionality that a full wall would allow, or at least a place to hang a mirror so she has an excuse to take even longer to get ready.
Let's go, kiddo!
I'm coming, just give me like 5 more minutes!
So before we could truly make this new room her own, I had to remove the door and replace it with a wall.
We're going to build the wall. We have no choice. We have no choice.
Which meant I'd get to utilize a brand new skill, something I've never done before. Drywall installation. What does one do when they need to learn a new skill? Go to YouTube, of course. I watched dozens and dozens of videos to give me a little bit of background on the process. And now, armed with a little bit of knowledge and an open mind, I was ready to dive in. What could go wrong? Well, you'll just have to watch to find out. Now let's get into it. The first step, as it is with most projects, is the demolition phase. This is arguably the most enjoyable, most satisfying phase for me anyway. I started by removing the door by just taking out a few simple screws. And then with just a few simple tools, just a hammer and a pry bar, I began removing all of the trim around the door. Finally, it was time to bring out my favorite tool of any demolition project, the reciprocating saw. I was able to use this sucker to easily carve through the frame, which was the next part of the doorway to go. And after a few initial establishing cuts were made, I was able just to go in with the hammer and pry bar and easily pull the rest of the frame away. With the door out of the way, it was time to address the gaping hole I'd left behind. This was done by cutting a few 2x4s to create the frame that I would ultimately use to attach the drywall to. I picked up a cheap hammer drill to secure the frame to the concrete floor. This is my first time using this particular drill, and it was very apparent as I realized that I had been using it in reverse the entire time. Fortunately, that didn't set me back too far, and I was ultimately able to secure the frame to the floor as intended. Next, it was just a matter of building the frame within the opening, making sure everything was level and plumb, and getting everything nice and secure. With the frame fully constructed, it was time to begin the process, finally, of covering this thing up with some drywall. The first thing I had to do was cut it to the right size. Cue the montage! that's it. There's literally 2 cuts. It couldn't be any simpler. With the drywall cut to the right dimensions, I could finally start getting it in place and securing it to the frame. Now, before going crazy and just throwing screws all over the drywall, I learned that it's important to consider using something like this, which is called a dimple bit. Its purpose is to prevent you from overdriving the screws. If you drive them too far into the drywall, you can damage it, which can lead to problems down the road. And this does a great job of ensuring you don't drive the screws too far. The doorway that I'm removing was an extra entryway into a utility and laundry room. And so to help minimize any noise or additional noise, I thought it'd be a good step to add some insulation, again, just to add as some sound protection, in addition to using some 5/8 inch thick drywall. It was pretty much rinse and repeat on the other side of the wall. And before you know it, we had this thing sealed up. I was finally ready to begin the process of applying the mud and tape to the drywall. This was by far the most tedious of all the processes. It was much more of an art form than I imagined it being. I decided to use a pre-mixed mud product. Even though it's pre-mixed, I had seen and heard that it was a good idea to add some water to it, which you saw me do there, just to help ensure it was the right consistency. Now, I don't know if I added too much water or just had the wrong product, but as you can see, the initial batch that I made was way too thin. Nevertheless, the project must go on. Moving on to the taping phase, I was using a paper tape product, which calls for laying down a coat of drywall compound first, then you cut the tape to the correct size, and then you wet the tape with another layer of the drywall mud. This helps ensure a smooth finish and eliminates the chance of bubbles. I continued the process until the entire perimeter of the sheet of drywall had been mudded and taped. And after that, it was time to call it a day. I started the next day scraping off any little boogers that had crusted up from the previous day's application of the drywall mud. This just helped ensure a smoother finish for the second coat of mud. And you'll see me doing that here. Again, the drywall compound was a little bit better on this day, but still much too thin than what it should have been. As you can see, things dripping and sliding around. And regardless, I moved on and continued until the entire door had another coat of mud on it. I applied a total of 2 coats of mud around the perimeter of the wall and then began the final phase of finishing. So I started off by sanding everything smooth. Now, given this was my first time, it was not the most pretty application of drywall mud. I had a lot of excess material that I had to remove. So I spent a good bulk of time sanding the wall until it was nice and smooth and ready for paint. After sanding, I primed and painted the walls and then added some trim and other finishing details. The last thing I had to do was attach my daughter's mirror that she was dying to have back. And just like that, I was ready to call this project good. Was it perfect? No, but I'll get better. And that's really the point and why I love these little projects like this. They're really an excellent way to try something new, to learn new skills, and to really build your confidence to take on something bigger than you may have ever expected you'd be able to accomplish. But I think the real question you should be asking yourself is, did it meet my needs? And in this case, I have to say, absolutely. I am a hero in my daughter's eyes, and that, my friends, is priceless. For every drop of blood I shed, for every expletive I shouted along the way, it was absolutely worth it. It's situations like this that I really love DIY and why I will continue to push myself and take on new challenges. What about you? Why do you love DIY? Let me know down in the comments below, and we'll catch you on the next one.